Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. It is the day before. Um, I have a lovely day planned tomorrow that involves being with a Zoom gathering with my family or what part of my family wants to come, and then just being with people. I mean, I won't go into it, but anyway, so I just want to share these two things. One of the things is last year I did or last year and this year I did the 9-month Ignatian exercises. And so really got into the habit of Lectio Divina, of kind of sinking into, and they invite you to kind of imaginatively put yourself into a scripture passage. And so I've been, I've been pondering, meditating on, contemplating with, I guess you could say, the parable of the prodigal son, um, the endless riches therein. And I always think of the beautiful Rembrandt painting, I think is in St. Petersburg, and Henry Nouwen wrote, I think, two books about it. Um, but in it, the older son is standing in the shadows. You can barely see him. The older, disapproving son. And if you know the parable, I'm sure you know the parable, Luke 15:20 to 24. The younger son has squandered his inheritance in the mire and comes tail between his legs, kind of cringing back. And the father, far from remonstrating and reproaching him, says, "Kill the fatted calf. My son was lost. He's found." And the older brother, who's been a good faithful son all along, is like pissed. He's like, "Why didn't you ever throw? I've been here doing my duty. How come you haven't thrown a banquet for me?" So what's coming to me is, just as in the parable of Mary and Martha. Mary's like busying herself preparing the meal, and Mary, and she's pissed, and Mary is of course sitting at the feet of the master, just lost in Christ, love for Christ and his teaching. And Mary, who's setting the table and cooking, says, "Hey, tell her to help me out." And I feel those are, I mean, I'm not obviously way from the first person to think of this, but they do seem to be two different like parts of my psyche. The active part, the contemplative part, the part that just wants to daydream and pray and think and be by myself, and then the other part of me that's sort of harsh and rigid, even I think to myself, of which I'm largely unaware. So anyway, the parable of the prodigal son, I always identify with the younger son because I myself big time squandered everything I'd been given for many years in the mire, came creeping back, was invited back to the human table. But there is a huge part of me that is also, that conveniently somehow forgets that I squandered my inheritance, and is, uh, I, very, very, I mean, who can unravel the human psyche, but there's a lot in there of, I paid my dues. Like, I have this thing where I'm very, very proud that I've worked since I was 13 and on and on. And it's like, well, I won't even, it's like, really, have you really worked that hard? Because you were drunk for 20 years. I mean, I did work most of that time, and it was horrible, and I had a hangover. But the point is, everything is a gift. Whether you've inherited 3 million bucks and have never had to work, or you're able-bodied enough and have the resources to work, it does. What difference does it make? It's all a gift. It's all a miracle. But there's something in me that is very can be very, very yeah, disapproving, sort of begrudging people when I feel they haven't worked hard enough, or have had their student loans forgiven, for in fact, like, well, I worked and I paid my, not, like that. And I'm not proud of it, but there it is. And so I'm really have been looking at that lately. And this morning, because what is underneath, you have to go deeper and deeper. And what I came to this morning was it's like I myself, because of my residual guilt over having been forgiven, I think, for the many, many, I mean, I won't, egregious sins and wrongs and hurt that I did to others. I think deep down, I myself can't believe I've been forgiven, and therefore there lies the shadow. I don't want to feel the guilt, so I project it upon others and my kind of disapproval. So it's like two parts of me that are the roots of which I somehow manage to hide, I think, from each other. So um and again, and so it just all comes back to always, yeah, it's the scandal. It is the massive scandal of Christianity, of the cross. We're already loved. There is nothing we could do that would put us beyond the reach of the Father's love if we have a humble and contrite heart. So, anyway, it's uh, it's just interesting to kind of through the scripture, through the gospels, you begin to see I'm reading this book, The God of Surprises. I think it's Gerard or Gerald Hughes, written back in the 70s or 80s, I think. But he talks about the treasure is within you, like that we do hold the key. So anyway, there you go. I just pray to um, be like the Father, the forgiving Father who just wants to throw a banquet for everyone. Speaking of Thanksgiving. And then the other thing is I don't know what happened to my copy of this one of the greatest spiritual books of all time, He Leadeth Me, by a servant of God now, Father Walter Ciszek. And Father Walter is, besides St. Therese of Lisieux, absolutely one of my, I just revere him. If you know his story at all, when did he live? 1904 to 1984. He was a tough-headed Polish guy from, I think, Pennsylvania, and somehow decided he wanted to go, walked through the snow to the Jesuit novitiate in, I don't know, upstate New York or somewhere. I'm probably getting it wrong, but I've written about him. Um, and had this deep desire to go to Russia. He didn't really even know why, just deep driving desire. Anyway, he ended up there. And of course, it turned out to be during the horrible Stalinist phase. And he spent 5 years in solitary and then I think 15 at least years in hard labor in Siberia. He finally, his family got him to trade him out with someone and he did eventually come home. But so he's written a couple books. With God in Russia, I think is his first one, which even he says in this one is not as good. He says this is the real book. He leadeth me, and he writes it with this guy. I think gets very little credit. Father Daniel Flaherty, also a Jesuit. It just did a fantastic job. Like that kind of. It's like writing like Carol Houselander or Madeleine Delbrel or these. It's simple, it's accessible, and it's deep, deep, deep. Anyway, he's talking about. I mean, I haven't. I've read this many years ago and was always struck by it. Somehow, I don't know where my copy went. I can't imagine I would have let go of it, but I just ordered another one. But he's talking about so he and his buddy Father Nestrov were they were assigned to this other place, Albertin, I think it was Poland, which was at least far away from home, but it wasn't Russia. They desperately wanted to go to Russia. So finally they get in, and their dream was, oh, we will be there for the Russian peasants who have no one to say mass for them and are desperate to have a shepherd to lead them in their faith. Well, they get there, and the atmosphere, the political atmosphere, is such that people are scared out of their wits. They won't even mention God. They're not going to, there's spies all over, neighbors are spying on each other. So there's absolutely nothing these priests can do. There's no one to minister to at all. And it's horrible. The food's horrible. They're doing hard. They are employed as kind of lumbermen or something. They're making no money. It's, like a plantation horrible. So they're not, it's both, they don't really mind that so much as they mind they have no one to minister to. And they start thinking, okay, that's it. This was a huge mistake. Even though they had prayed and discerned, we're going home. And he says, that was the temptation that Father Nestrov and I faced in Teploya Gora. And though our situation may have been somewhat unique, the temptation itself was not. And I don't know any human being who cannot identify with this. It was the same temptation faced by everyone who has followed a call and found that the realities of life were nothing like the expectations he had in the first flush of his vision and enthusiasm. It is a temptation that comes to anyone, for example, who has entered religious life with a burning desire to serve God and God alone, only to find that the day to day life in religion is humdrum and pedestrian, equally as filled with moments of human understanding, misunderstanding, daily routines, and distractions as the secular life he left behind in the world. It is the same temptation faced by young couples in marriage when the honeymoon is over and they must face a seemingly endless future of living together and scratching out an existence in the same old place and the same old way. It is the temptation to say, this life is not what I thought it would be. I simply cannot stand it, and I will not stay. I will not serve. And, yeah, anyone who's been married, talk to my ex-husband if you want to really hear about this temptation playing out. Um, wonderful, wonderful guy. Annulled. Uh, but in the writing life, and this is partly why it strikes me so much, because I am working on this book that I've wanted to write for many, many years about the creative life, the writing life, the vocation of writing, and how it's panned out for me, and just to encourage people um, to pursue it themselves if that's the call of their heart. But it is very much, well, I'm not so sure I had a bunch of illusions. I think partly because I started so late in life. I was so thrilled to get to it that I just can't even to this day believe that I even get to do it. But I did definitely, I had some at the beginning. I had a few instances of like, oh, here's your break. Like right away, I think Norton asked me to write my conversion story, and I thought, oh, this is it. And then that, of course, fell through. And I got to do these commentaries for All Things Considered NPR at one point, and when I got that call, I thought, oh, this is it. I'm going to be catapulted into, oh, I don't know, just kind of some kind of relative security, and that has of course never panned out at all. And there's all kinds of, anyway, and so that's the temptation. And I see scores and scores of would-be writers who, they can't face the idea that, yeah, maybe you will be poor, quote unquote. I mean, relatively, maybe you won't own a house, and people are just immediately like, I think people have a very, very low threshold for in any way being like out of step or out of, oh, what will people think? And it's like, well, we all better, no, I should say, we're all invited to learn that what other people think is not the question. The question is, what, for the follower of Christ, what does he think? Um, but anyway, so he talks about this temptation, and they struggle and they struggle, and they're, oh no, we need to go back. We're just not doing any good. We're not. And they would go into into the woods, the two of them, and celebrate the mass like for each other, and they would take turns giving a little homily. It's just, oh, and it meant so much to them. He would do that later for the guys in Siberia too. But anyway, but this is the thing. So then he comes to this realization. I just think this is the heart of the Gospels. It's the heart of recovery if you're in any kind of 12-step recovery. And then one day together, it dawned on us. God granted us the grace to see the solution to our dilemma, the answer to our temptation. It was the grace, quite simply, to look at our situation from his viewpoint rather than ours. It was the grace not to judge our efforts by human standards or by what we ourselves wanted or expected to happen, but rather according to God's design. And I just think this is perfect for the many of us who will be perhaps going into the family situations that may be just ever so slightly fraught, for example, tomorrow. Um, Rather, the will of God as God envisioned it and revealed it to us each day in the created situations with which He presented us. That's God's will. It's not what we think it should be or imagine it looking like, always showing us, of course, to our quote, best advantage. Um, his will for us was the 24 hours of each day, the people, the places, the circumstances He set before us in that time. Those were the things God knew were important to Him and to us at that moment. And those were the things upon which He wanted us to act, not out of any abstract principle or out of any subjective desire, even to, quote, do the will of God. Um, Instead, to accept the situation itself as His will. Um, and he goes on to say, oh, this requires an almost childlike faith, the profound truth about the will of God. So I think this is just so, so key because I don't know about you, but I often, I think, yeah, no, I'm super, super grateful and things are really going pretty well. And, but like, I really feel like God is asking me to do some, like, I feel like God's will maybe is to do some like extra, some really like, I don't know, some huge kind of cataclysmic, like, I don't know, maybe it's supposed to move, maybe. And I just, it's like more and more I just get, oh, how about, like instead of going to like Africa or Scotland or Italy or something, or go there if you want, but like why not explore Arizona, like the state where you live, or better yet, your city, Tucson, where you live. I mean, there's the place is surrounded by trails and mountains and stuff, some of which I've, a teeny bit of which I've sampled, but more than that, it's like the people, the just literally what is in front of me in my day. Can I shampoo my rug with love? Can I clean my bathtub with love? Can I make my little shopping list? Can I stop and say, daytime prayer from the office or whatever is indicated in our day? So, because then it becomes filled with joy because you don't have to look any further. It's all right here. And there's, I think, this deep, deep, deep peace that comes with that. And of course, hard stuff comes up too every single day. It's like not to worry, like the big things, quote unquote, the hard things, the joyful things, all of it. Anyway, if that helps anybody, or not even helps, but just I don't know, feeds something in you. That is great. And, happy Thanksgiving. And it's obviously not a liturgical holiday, but it's a nice time to feel neighborly and it's always a good time to give thanks. Every day is Thanksgiving if you're a Catholic. Okay, thanks. Bye.